we do about 60 books a year and have a wide list that ranges from Kentucky and Appalachian studies to fiction to film studies. We have a great film biography list. And we also do some foreign policy, a little bit in military studies as well. And we also have a great series in civil rights. And we did win the Civil Rights Book of the Year this year. So I'm pretty proud about all of that. With that, we do about 30 books a year that we would consider, scholarly. They typically have pretty low print runs. They are really made for academics and used in classes. And then half of our list, about 30 books a year, we would consider trade. And that just means general interest. So that would basically be anything that you would see at a bookstore. So we are the preeminent bourbon publisher in the United States. So we have a wide ranging list of items. So, and thank you all so much for having me today.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to continue with about 9 more questions, and then we can open up for a Q&A if anyone has any questions for Ashley. So first question is, as a child, what was your dream job?
Sure. So I really thought that I was going to be a music teacher when I was growing up. I took piano for about 12 years and was really into it for a long time. And honestly, I never dreamed that I'd be working in publishing. So I just kind of fell into it, honestly. So, but I've always loved, the music and the arts and all of that. So I've been very lucky to end up to be in more of a, artistic creative profession too. So.
Awesome. So would you mind letting us know what your background and educational experience is?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to UK as an undergrad. My undergrad was in advertising and PR. And so I had worked in several different ways of publishing. I actually got my start in the yearbook at UK. So I learned how to work in InDesign, how to work in Photoshop there and writing. And from there, I was actually an intern where I'm the director now when I was in undergrad. So I worked here for about a year and a half before I went to grad school. I went to grad school at UK as well. My communication, my specialization was in media communication there. And honestly, I really thought that I was going to work in marketing. And that was kind of where I got my start. So my first real job, if you want to call it that, was working at the Herald Leader. I was a news designer there. I worked nights, which was pretty wild, but it kind of worked. When I was 23, it wasn't, too much of a big deal to get off at 1 o'clock in the morning and then just go downtown afterwards. So that was kind of fun. The Herald Leader was a really great place to work then. That was kind of pre-2008 as well. So unfortunately, most of the people that worked there don't. So, newspaper business isn't what it was, but that was a great start into kind of thinking about getting into publishing and having those jobs really kind of set the stage for the rest of my career. Like I mentioned, I thought that I was going to work more in kind of corporate marketing. My next job after working at the Herald Leader was at Blood Horse Publications, which is thoroughbred publishers. So they do the Blood Horse, which is the thoroughbred breeding and racing magazine, and then the Horse, which is equine healthcare. And then they also do Keeneland Magazine and Kentucky Derby. And then they also had a book publisher. So I did corporate marketing for them, which basically was setting up exhibits and meeting with advertisers and kind of meeting with writers and things like that. And I really liked that. I loved working in marketing. And then a job came up at the press, at the University Press of Kentucky. And so I went back. So that was the second time that I worked at UPK as the advertising, directing, direct mail and exhibits manager. So that was in 2008 that I came back to the press. So, right as there were a lot of changes going on with the financial crisis, but we weathered it really well. We're a nonprofit organization. So we don't necessarily, I always tell people, we don't necessarily have to make money. We just can't lose money, which is a good place to be in when you're trying to work with that. And I really always sort of envisioned myself with that career, working on kind of the sales and promotion side of it. And then the regional editor position came open in 2011, and the director at that time got in touch with me. And, I was a Kentuckian. I knew the list really well. I knew all of the folks. And so he said, would you want to acquire? And so when we talk about acquiring, it's kind of what the word means in acquisitions of literally bringing in the books. So we work with looking at proposals, looking at manuscripts, and saying yay or nay. Hey, you want to publish this book or you don't? And so I went into that position very much intending to go back and hoping to be the marketing director when that position came open. And then when it finally did, I was like, no, I love acquisitions. I love working on the creation side of books, working with authors really early on to kind of help them with their vision and help them with their manuscript, and coming up with an idea, and then 2 or 3 years later seeing it as a book project. So I loved that for a long time. I never thought that I would leave UPK, and then Indiana University Press got in touch with me, and they had a trade director position open. And so like I had mentioned before, trade is just general interest books. So I was really enthusiastic about that. I actually stayed living in Lexington the whole time I worked for Indiana. So I had worked remotely for about 4 years for them, traveling a lot, going to different conferences, meeting with authors, and with the trade director, I kind of joined both of my backgrounds, so acquisitions and marketing. So seeing books from the very beginning to the time that they come out, and working with authors on what I call kind of a platform of, how are you going to promote the book? Who do you know? Things like that. So I worked at Indiana for about 4 years, and then the director position came back open at the University Press of Kentucky. So I came back this March and made it 3.5 days before we all went remote for COVID. So it was quite an interesting start for sure. But lucky, this is the third time that I've worked here, and most everybody I had worked with before. So that made it a little bit easier of a transition. So that was a long tail, but that's how I got to where I am now.
That's awesome. You seem like you have quite a bit of experience, and I love the fact that people were coming to you, acquiring about you, applying for positions. So that probably is due to your network of people that you're surrounding with, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So the Indiana job, it's very much, it is about who you know, honestly. So working at a lot of different places, knowing people, and knowing that you can do a good job. So the Indiana position, I got that because it's a small world after all in publishing. So my old boss, his wife had worked there, and they had been through a couple failed searches for that position, and then kind of got in touch with me. And that's really why they let me work remotely, because they were looking for somebody in that position. So I highly recommend that. Show people that you work hard and that you care about what you're doing. And ultimately, I think, that's how you advance your career is it's who you know. It's very rare, even these days, that we do a search for an employee and don't at least have 2 or 3 people that we've kind of pinned as, we really want to have them apply.
Absolutely. I've experienced that as well. So everyone take note. So you kind of touched on our next question, which was, when you were starting your career, did you expect to be in your current position? So if you want to expand on that at all.
Sure, absolutely not. The idea that I was an intern here, the thought that I would be the director here, I literally never crossed my mind. But I think that that's good. I think things change. I really, 10 years ago, I really thought that I knew where my career was going and what I wanted to do. And then I ended up taking another job. Honestly, I took it because it was more money, but still within the same organization, and then found out, I love it. And so I think that that's been eye-opening for me too. I think even in the last 6 months has been really eye-opening, because I had all these big plans for what I want to do with my new position and for the press. And of course, all of that's thrown on its head because we're kind of working in a different way. But no, definitely not. And so, but I think that that's been good. Life definitely surprises you, and sometimes it can work in your favor too. So this is not what I envision doing in any way, but I can't imagine doing anything else now. So.
Awesome. So what does a typical day look like for you in this current position that you're in?
Yeah, why I love publishing so much is every day is a little bit different, which is what is good. So I thought that I'd kind of walk through, what happens with a book and how we do things with that, because I think it's more typical to talk about what process a book goes through, and it really just depends on what's going on that day. So we get a lot of proposals and manuscripts in. I'll take a look at that.
I directly oversee acquisitions. So we have 2 acquiring editors, and we each have our different areas that we acquire in. I handle film, which is so much fun. So we have new biographies of, old film stars that are coming out. So that's been a lot of fun. So I'll use those as kind of one of an example. So I'll get in a manuscript, I'll read through it. So, a big part of my job is to read, which is it's really nice. So I'll go through there and give feedback for the author. Sometimes it's awful. And we do a lot of rejection. But with that, since we're a nonprofit, I consider it part of our mission to try and help people. So, set them up at a writing workshop if they need a lot of help, or sometimes it's great, but it's not a good fit for us. So we only have, these certain areas that we publish in. So the university press is a small world. And so I'll say, hey, I know this person here, why don't you talk with them about doing that? So we do try to do rejection with some help as well. We don't just, say, no, this is terrible. So, but if it's good, I'm going to work with somebody on the organization or their story. And inevitably, I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I am not a film scholar. I am not an Appalachian scholar. And so with that, we use the peer review process for all of our projects. So I usually solicit 2 outside readers, folks that I think are very knowledgeable about this area. I try to get 2 different readers just so I can kind of give 2 different perspectives to it. With that, I do try to get, a very diverse group of voices, both in my authors and the people that are reviewing the projects as well, so we can kind of look at it from very different perspectives. It can't just be my perspective. I want it to be folks who really know kind of what's going on with that. So we'll send it out to 2 readers. They'll give reports. It's usually a written report, maybe 3 to 4 pages. With that, we're not worried about copy editing or anything like grammar, spelling. That doesn't bother me at all. It's really thinking about, what is your voice? Does this book fit one of our 2 categories? So we have our mission books, and that's why we're a nonprofit. That's why we're a university press, to publish scholarship and important works that, otherwise wouldn't be viable at a big press. So we have, one of our award-winning books for this year is A Simple Justice, and it's the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. So this is the story of, Kentucky women both fighting in Frankfurt and on the national scale. So, a big trade press is never going to take that on, but it's really important to our history as a state. So that would be a mission book that we're going to do. We're never going to make money on that book, but that's not really the point. And so that's about half of our list, and then half of it is the general interest projects. So, the bourbon books, Weta Michael, who I think some people might be familiar with, she owns a bunch of restaurants here in town. So we're doing her book in the spring. The film books would definitely be a part of that. So with that in mind, we evaluate books differently. And once we have those evaluations, we'll take it to our editorial board. As I mentioned, we're a consortium of all of the ones in the state. So they'll take a look at it. They typically see a short description, some information about the bio and the readers, and give their approval for that. And then I try to walk authors through the whole publishing process, which can be kind of scary. We have a lot of hoops to jump through. So we do professional copy editing, we do design, and so we work on production. 30% of our sales are ebook as well. So it's very important to know that your EPUB version is going to be, it's going to be as beautiful as the print version that you have. So I'm really concerned about all of that. I think since I started as a graphic designer, it is very important to me what the books look like and what that final product looks like. And then ultimately getting out for sale. So the back end is very important in publishing these days. I think about what we were doing when I was here in 2010 versus what we're doing now, and they look nothing alike. We think about keywords, and just think about when you're on Google and you're trying to find a book, we need to make sure that you can find our book. And so all of that's done by a very intricate database that, us and all publishers use with that. And we go through marketing too. I'm very lucky that we finally were able to hire a marketing director. One of the items that happened with COVID
is there was a hiring freeze. So I've also been the marketing director for the past 6 months until 2 weeks ago. So I'm very happy to have her. But with that, that's presenting to sales reps and media and trying to license audiobooks. So there's a lot to it. But that's kind of what I love about it is it's different every day. And, it's making sure that you're delegating to the right folks. And ultimately everything's on a schedule with publishing. So we do about 60 books a year. So every month we have about 5 new books that are coming out. So that's what you just try to do is, keep that schedule as much as you can. And, getting started in the newspaper business was good for, keeping on a schedule.
That sounds like a lot. You definitely had your hands full the past 6 months, especially having 2 roles. I commend you on that. What is one piece of advice that you would give a young artist or a young student from your past experiences?
Sure. I think creativity is something that's so important. When I'm thinking about the projects that I'm working on, as well as the folks that work for me, yes, there are a lot of formulaic things to any job, but to stand out is really being creative. And I think that you can be really proud of what you do too. So we talk a lot about that at the press of, we very much care about what we do. I'm very proud of the fact that we're working, as a nonprofit, that we're, having lots of voices that we can kind of put up with that. So, or put up with our content and our platform that we have. So I think my advice for everybody is, obviously the work hard part of it is good, but, kind of thinking outside of the box and making things a little bit better. So, if that's publishing, trying to make the story more fleshed out, trying to think about what you could do to market and promote it. And sometimes it's not just about sales, but, what could be really cool? Can you do a virtual event for it? Or, would the public library be interested in doing it? For us, we're trying to incorporate a lot of music into ours as well. So like the new film biography that we're doing, it's on Jane Mansfield, who is Mariska Hargitay's mother, and she was a huge sex symbol from the 1970s. We have a whole list of sexy sirens coming out next spring, which is really cool. But she died tragically, so it's like this classic Hollywood tale, and she's come kind of a pop culture icon. So with our media release for that one, we're making Spotify playlists of all of these, bands that are named after her and songs. And then we're thinking, and there's different places that you can watch on Netflix. So just kind of thinking from a multimedia perspective, and that has changed so much in the last 10 years, is that whatever product you're working with, think about it in all the different ways that people are kind of consuming media, whether that's music, whether that's art. Digital art is such a big point of what we're doing now, that thinking about it from a lot of different perspectives. I know it's kind of vague, but just trying to think outside of the box. And ultimately, I think it makes you enjoy your job more too.
Awesome. What do you consider to be your most successful career move or moment?
I don't know if successful, but defining for me was moving from marketing to acquisitions and rethinking what I thought that I wanted to do. So as I said, I did it just because I thought I was gonna make more money. But ultimately, I came to understand that, hey, I can really use what I knew in this other area in this way. And I think it's very easy to say, I want to do this specifically, but you may not know that you might do something else and really love it too. So I think that was my biggest transition. And then the good thing, ultimately, I think that's why I have the director job now, is I had worked in design, I worked in marketing, I worked in acquisitions. So I can come and say, hey, I know what so I understand the jobs that, the people that are reporting to me do.
Awesome. So what role does an artist or your position, like yourself, play in our society?
Sure. I think you're a gatekeeper, obviously, and, that can have a negative connotation, but I think it can also be a positive thing as well. I don't consider myself an artist, but I do consider myself offering a way for artists to be able to showcase their work. In addition to writing, we also have it, one of the initiatives that I'm working on now is making sure that we're using as much local art for our cover designs as we can, to be able to, really love the region that we're doing in that. With that, there does come a responsibility. You know, I'm a white woman, and so with that, I want to make sure that I am not only reaching out to folks of color, you know, the LGBTQ community, to make sure that we're hearing what other people are wanting to do, both from a peer aspect and from our editorial board. So that's something that I'm very cognizant of, and we do try of. And so particularly with folks on our staff too, making sure that everybody has a voice at the table, you know, whether you're a staffer, whether you're a series editor, whether you're on the editorial board, making sure that we're having, you know, as open a voice as we can. I'm not going to say it's easy, and I'm not saying that we're perfect in any capacity, but we do listen and we do try. And so I think that that's something that I'm very cognizant of. So recently, you know, we had a book, and it's about teaching African American history to elementary school students. And I looked at the proposal, and there were 2 white men as the co-editors, and there were only 3 African American contributors to this collection. And I was like, this cannot happen. And so, you know, you have to try and make sure that anything that I'm putting out there, I'm going to have my name attached to it too. So I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. I think the peer review process is part of that as well. And so that's what we're trying to do with all artists is, you know, showcase great art. And ultimately, if I don't think that we're going to be a good fit for your publisher, but I get a lot of stuff that I love too. So I try to make a home for you, or, you know, put you in touch with an agent or something like that I think could help you.
Awesome. What encourages or inspires you in your job?
I love the press. I think that I'm pretty lucky to have that, and particularly not that I don't want to bash the Hoosiers, but you know, I worked at Indiana University Press for 4 years, and I liked what I did there. But I didn't love Indiana. I didn't love Indiana in the Midwest. I truly love Kentucky and Appalachia. You know, it's where I grew up. It's where my family's from. And so being able to work with folks in the region has been such a blessing. So I really appreciate that. We get to work with a lot of folks that I used to love reading too. So I remember I used to, you know, read all Silas House's novels and just be in awe of him. And he's an imprint editor for me now. So, you know, we get to talk on a regular basis. So sometimes that's surreal to get to work with folks who you really had admired for a long time. I was Bell Hook's editor for one of her books, which is just, you know, amazing. So, you know, working with folks and being able to make an imprint on a region that I care about too. And you get to do some fun too. I love working on the bourbon books. They're a lot of fun. And you know, we get to do some children's books too. So even though there's some academic titles in there, you know, we do try to have a lot of fun with it too.
Great. Okay, so our last question is, what would you like to do next? What are your current career goals?
This is the first position. Now, granted, I've only been here 6 months, but this is the first position that I've ever been in that this is what I want to do. So I'd sort of put my eye on the director position about 2 years ago, because I knew that the current director who had been here before, I worked with before, she had previously been the marketing director too, and I knew that she was planning on moving on. I don't really want to do anything else. I think what I think about working is, what can we do with our list? What can we move forward? Acquisitions, I tell my folks here, it's a 3-year game, and that's best case scenario. So, you know, if I come up with an idea, or I see somebody who's written a magazine article that I'm like, hey, this could be a really good book, or I'd love to talk with them, they have such a great writing style. You know, from that first contact, 3 years is your best case scenario to have a finished book. Sometimes you're working at 5 and even 10 years. So I was talking with an author yesterday, and I put her book under contract in 2011, and we don't anticipate to have it until next year. That's how it goes sometimes. So thinking about the long-term possibilities, it is mind-boggling sometimes, but it does let you to kind of, take a breath and know that things will happen. So right now at the press, I'm thinking of not only what we can offer in terms of the books that we're publishing, but content. So we have about 2,500 books that we've published kind of all time. And one of the big initiatives that I worked on this summer, and it just went live last month, is all of the colleges and universities and the historical societies in the state. I've opened up 1,100 of our titles. So if you are on any of the campuses, you have free and open access to any of those. I hope in the next 12 months that's going to be at all public libraries and all public schools in Kentucky as well. So the big thing that I love about university presses is we're thinking not only about the books coming forward, but what we can do with the books that we already have and the knowledge that we have. And to me, opening that up and making that free and available for everybody, regardless of their capability of being able to access to that, I love that. And at the end of the day, I was just talking about it with my operations director earlier today. We both feel really good about the fact that I can go to work, I can work hard, enjoy what I'm doing, and feel like I'm giving contribution to the society. It's not like we're changing the world here, but things that we do are positive, which is really good. And ultimately, we have a pretty good time at work too. So I like that, working with authors. And going back to your previous question, it's different every day, which is really nice. Right now we're working on kind of the books that are releasing. So our new lead title for this year, I just found out this morning that we got green lighted for national NPR, which sometimes can be like $2,000, 2,000 copies additional when you're selling. So that was a big news. And so it's just good to feel really good about when you hear things like that, and just being excited for the books and for your authors too, which is great.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that you found a position that you don't want to go anywhere. I understand that feeling. I actually feel that way in my job too. I can't imagine doing something else. So it's a good feeling to have once you get there.
It is. Once you get there, it's very nice. It's very nice to feel that way.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so that is all of the formal questions that we have for you, but does anyone have any questions that you all would like to ask Ashley? Yes, Emma.
Earlier in the talk, you said that, a lot of the positions that you've held are because of like the people that you knew and people that you made connections with. So do you have any like good networking strategies?
I hate to go back to internships, but I think it's such a great way to have people know. To me, there's networking is people know your name, and then there's people know that you do awesome work. And we have a very robust intern program here, as well as, I can speak to publishing in particular because, I've been there, but that's a huge area of what we do. So we have, we do have a lot of undergraduates as well. We also have several people in MFA programs, as well as someone who's finishing their PhD now. So we have a wide range of folks being able to work with that. And for me, when I had worked, I was getting used to design. I was doing a little bit of writing for cover designs. So I was able to increase my portfolio, which I think is incredibly important, that you can go to a prospective employer and say, no, it's not just here's what I can say that I can do. Here, look at what I've done. And so I was able to go and say, hey, here's these subject catalogs that I've done. Here's this cover catalog copy that I wrote. And being able to diversify your skills, it was important when I was first looking at a job. It is essential now. And so thinking about just making sure that you're able to do kind of all the little things. I highly recommend that folks, have a basic knowledge of HTML, even if you're not working on kind of marketing and the website of it. Even my acquisitions folks now, we're working on metadata, and that's a huge part of what you're thinking about. And folks would never really think about that being part of publishing. So, having basic Photoshop skills, having basic InDesign skills, that's gonna, that for me, that was what opened up the door. But for us, that's really what we can really say is, hey, I want you to not only write the copy for this, but design something for us. And, you don't have to be an artist in that area to be able to do it, but being able to say, hey, I have all of these basic skills, and maybe make a complete package.
then that would be good. And obviously, if anybody is interested in an internship, feel free to contact me. We do have open positions for the spring too. So.
I'll make sure to add your information to our Canvas page. So if you all are interested to reach out to Ashley, you can have that. And Kristen, did you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering if you had any advice for someone who wants to get into writing, and like whether or not it's like creative or academic writing, but someone who wants to maybe get into like working on getting works published.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's the great thing about kind of this region is there's so many great resources for to be able to do that. First, write every day. That's what I tell even if it's crap, just write it, get it out, make it part of your daily aspect to do it. I think that editing is just as important as the writing process too, because getting it down on paper, whether it's stream of conscious, then going through and sometimes being able to have something that's short and eloquent and very much edited and curated can be much more important than them being able to have something long. The Carnegie Center in Lexington is really terrific. They have a lot of writing workshops for that. If you do have the availability to go for a whole week, the Appalachian Writers Workshop in Hyndman is one of the best writing workshops in the entire nation. There's lots of really terrific people that can go there. They also have some really big name authors that come. So Barbara Kingsolver will come and do events. Nikki Finney, National Book Award winner, she's going to be there. There's lots of really big name authors that go. And so you go and you stay there for the whole week. You write, people are working on you with you one-on-one to be able to do that. So for you, Kristen, specifically, I would also recommend the Kentucky Women Writers Conference. That's in September every year. And so that is, they bring in folks on a national level. So even though it says Kentucky, it is a national conference of the folks who are presenting there. But, just getting a lot down on paper and don't be afraid to be told no. And that would probably be my biggest advice. Keep on sending it out to folks. Literary journals are a great place to start with that. So a lot of universities have those. Typically, it's a very small submission fee or no submission fee. And then oftentimes, if there is one, you'll also get a subscription to the journal for the year. So I think that that's always nice that, you pay the submission fee. You might not be selected, but then you get to see other writers. So write all the time and, don't be afraid to be rejected. That's part of the process, unfortunately. And so I think that, but there's lots of really weird, I don't think that people look at this region and do not think of us as a literary community. And I would say that that's completely not true, that we have a lot of really great resources. So I was trying to think if there's, the Appalachian Writers Workshop is amazing. I can't say enough about it. And if you can't go for the whole week, they do have a big event on Thursday nights, and that's kind of when they have their big speaker as well, too. So there's lots of resources for that virtually right now. They have the Makery that they're doing at Hyndman, and so I think that you all can sign up that virtually, and they have lots of events that you can attend that are free, too.
Awesome. I'll also try, I wrote that down too, Kristen, if you didn't catch it all. So we can add it I'll add it to Canvas if anyone else was interested in any of that. Are there any other questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for being here today so we can learn a little bit more about publishing and the other side of looking at books. So that was very interesting, and we really enjoyed your talk. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hopefully I'll put your information on Canvas, and hopefully you'll get a few potential interns for the spring semester. So. Thank you, and I think we are done. So